Why does the notion of despising weakness stir such a visceral reaction within us? It's a question that might feel sharp, even jarring at first glance, yet it's one worth holding close. Friedrich Nietzsche, a philosopher whose name echoes through history with both reverence and controversy, didn't shy away from asking it. He peered into the heart of humanity and saw something unsettling, not a simple lack of brawn or bravado, but a deeper, more insidious frailty. To him, weakness wasn't about trembling hands or faltering steps. It was a refusal to meet ourselves with unflinching honesty, a clinging to emotional crutches that sap our independence, and a stubborn reluctance to push beyond the boundaries we've drawn around our own potential. Take a moment to sit with that. How often have you stood at the edge of a choice that could redefine your life, whether to leap towards something new or retreat into the familiar, and hesitated? Or perhaps worse, how many times have you glimpsed a truth about yourself, raw and unpolished, only to turn away because facing it felt too heavy? Nietzsche saw these moments not as mere stumbles, but as since to living authentically with courage. In this exploration, we'll dive into the depths of his fierce critique, peeling back the layers of his perspective on weakness to reveal how his ideas about strength and self-overcoming can illuminate our own paths. This isn't just a philosophical exercise. It's a mirror held up to our lives, urging us to ask, are we truly living, or merely drifting? Let's start by unpacking what Nietzsche meant when he cast his scornful eye on weakness. He wasn't preoccupied with the physical flex of muscle or the stamina to outlast a storm. His focus was sharper, cutting through to the essence of our being. Weakness, in his view, was a state of existence, a quiet betrayal of the self. It showed itself in the lies we tell ourselves to avoid discomfort, in the emotional dependencies we lean on instead of standing tall, and in the unwillingness to confront life with boldness and clarity. Imagine someone you know, maybe it's you, who keeps putting off the decisions that matter most. Perhaps it's staying in a job that dims the spirit, day after day, because the unknown feels too vast. Or maybe it's sidestepping a conversation that could heal a strained relationship, letting the silence grow heavier instead. That procrastination, that avoidance, isn't just inaction, it's a retreat from the responsibility of crafting a life that's truly ours. Nietzsche believed this was more than a personal failing, it was a trap. It locks us into an existence we haven't chosen, a half-life shadowed by what might have been. In his seminal work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he introduces the Mensch, often translated as the Overman, a figure that looms large in his philosophy. But don't mistake this for some distant, superhuman ideal. The Mensch is a symbol of self-overcoming, a person who, despite the weight of hardship, dares to face their most uncomfortable truths and acts with resolve. They're not perfect, not untouchable, they're human, flawed, and yet they choose. They don't flee from life's challenges, they step into them, forging a path that's theirs alone. This brings us to a question that lingers like a quiet take. Does ignoring our weaknesses steal from us the chance to live a life that feels authentically ours? Nietzsche would nod emphatically. For him, the heart of weakness lay in dishonesty, not the kind we wield against others, but the subtle, insidious deceit we practice within. Picture the protagonist of Dostoevsky's White Nights, a young dreamer lost in his own head. Night after night, he spins romantic fantasies, tales of love and grandeur, while his real world remains stark and solitary. He calls it creativity, a harmless escape, but in truth, it's a cocoon of self-deception, keeping him from the messy, vital work of living. Does that sound familiar? Look around today, and you'll see modern echoes of this. Social media unfurls endless reel of curated perfection, sunlit vacations, beaming faces, triumphant milestones. Yet beneath those glossy surfaces lie the fears, insecurities, and failures we all carry but rarely confess. Nietzsche saw this disconnect, this polished facade, as a profound danger. It's not the stumbles or the limits that define weakness, he'd argue it's the denial of them. Strength isn't pretending we're whole, it's staring into our imperfections, feeling the sting, and choosing to grow anyway. True weakness, he might whisper, is the lie we cling to when the truth could set us free. Now, let's pause on Nietzsche's provocative stance on compassion, a virtue he didn't reject outright but examined with a skeptic's care. He believed compassion could be a force for good, a genuine lifting of another's spirit. But he also saw its shadow, a manipulative kind that weakens instead of heals. Think of a historical ruler, benevolent in name, who hands out scraps to the needy not to empower them, but to keep them tethered to his good will. The food fills bellies, but the opportunities for independence, work, learning, growth never come. It's charity as control, a gift that binds rather than frees. We've seen this through time, haven't we? But this isn't just the stuff of kings and empires, it creeps into our daily lives, too, in subtler shades. Imagine a relationship where one person perpetually rescues the other, paying bills, making choices, smoothing every wrinkle. At first, it looks like kindness, a warm hand extended in care. Over time, though, the one receiving help begins to shrink, convinced they can't stand without that support. What started as compassion twists into a velvet cage, locking both in roles they didn't mean to play. Nietzsche's challenge cuts deep. When we help, are we truly strengthening those around us, or are we perhaps unwittingly feeding their fragility to bolster our own sense of power? It's a question that demands we look at our intentions, not just our actions. Willpower in Nietzsche's world wasn't a fleeting wish or a vague hope, it was the lifeblood of a self-directed existence. He compared it to an electrical current, brimming with potential, but useless if it scatters. Without direction, it's just noise, fizzling out before it can spark anything real. We've all tasted this, haven't we? The energy was there, pulsing and alive, but the focus wasn't. In Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche ties this will to our capacity for creation, insisting that strength isn't merely wanting something, it's aligning every part of us, mind and heart and hands, to make it real. Think of a river. When its waters rush through a single channel, it can turn wheels and light cities. Let it sprawl aimlessly, and it's little more than a damp stain on the earth. So, where does your will flow? Is it a steady force, carving its way toward meaning, or does it spill into forgotten resolutions and half-lit dreams? Then there's Amor Fati, Nietzsche's love of fate, a phrase that hums with quiet power. It's not about bowing to life's blows or surrendering to despair. It's about embracing every piece of our journey, the bitter and the sweet, as vital to who we are. This wasn't abstract for him. He lived it. Through crippling illness, through the sting of rejection, through the solitude that shadowed his days, Nietzsche turned his suffering into a forge, hammering out works that still burn bright. Think of your own life's unexpected turns, a job that slipped away, a bond that frayed, a plan that crumbled. In the thick of it, it feels like ruin, doesn't it? But step back and you might see how those moments sculpted you, uncovered strengths you didn't know you had, or nudged you toward paths you'd never have chosen. Amor Fati is this shift in sight, not resisting what's happened, but weaving it into the fabric of your story. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. He famously wrote not a dare to court pain, but a call to transform it. Instead of asking why life dealt you this hand, why not ask what you can craft from it? Nietzsche also raised a warning flag about nihilism, that hollow drift where meaning fades to gray. He didn't see it as some random plague. He traced it back to weakness, a collective faltering, when we lose our grip on purpose and our will to build something greater. Without a compass, we're just leaves tossed by the wind, reacting instead of creating, existing instead of thriving. Today, that warning feels close to home. We drown in distractions, endless feeds, fleeting highs, a clamor that drowns out the stillness where purpose might grow. Nietzsche saw this as a breeding ground for decline, a slow unraveling that toppled civilizations before us. When a society or a person lets go of its core, it drifts, consumed by apathy or swallowed by conformity. His answer wasn't to wait for meaning to fall from the heavens, it was to forge it ourselves, even in the smallest acts. Purpose isn't a grand gift bestowed, it's a fire we stoke, day by day. So, let's bring this home, make it ours. Find a quiet spot, grab a pen, and breathe. Ask yourself, Am I living what I hold true or just what the world expects? Write it down, let it settle. It's a hard mirror to face, but it's the first step to knowing where you stand. Next, what's sapping my strength without pushing me forward? Jot down the drains, the relationships that exhaust, the tasks that clutter, the worries that spin without end. Then, beside them, how can I tilt my focus toward what lights me up? Think of willpower as that current. This is where you guide it. Third, what tough moment taught me something I still carry? Maybe it was a loss that left you raw but wiser. Note it, and how it can lift you now. Finally, how can I turn the everyday into something that matters? Pick a simple act: brewing coffee, tending a plant, walking the dog, and make it a quiet echo of who you want to be. These aren't answers you'll nail down in a flash. They're threads to pull, slowly weaving a life with intent. Nietzsche didn't despise weakness out of spite. He saw it as a barrier, a weight holding us back from the fullness of who we could be. Strength, for him, wasn't about towering over others, it was about rising above ourselves. Every choice, every honest glance inward, is a brick in that climb. You're here, thinking, feeling, questioning, and that's no small thing. I'm thankful to share this space with you, to walk this path alongside someone brave enough to seek more. Your presence alone is proof of a spark that won't dim. For true freedom, this isn't just talk, it's a beckoning to live with purpose. Nietzsche shows us that weakness isn't our doom, it's our chance to grow. So, tell me, what hit you here? How do these ideas ripple through your days? Share below. I'm eager to hear your voice, to keep this alive together. And don't go yet. Olivia and James will step in next, unpacking how this ties to our deepest freedoms. Hit subscribe, tap that like, pass this on, toss out your ideas for what's next. Let's shape this journey as one. The road's steep, but as Nietzsche knew, it's in the climb that we find our greatness. Become who you are.